Welcome to healthU. Finally, breakthrough Alzheimer's disease drugs have arrived. The FDA has approved revolutionary therapeutics that can slow disease progression by 4 to 6 months. This is the first time in medical history that we have an effective treatment targeting the root cause of the disease. For a long time, Alzheimer's disease was considered an incurable terminal illness. More than 50 million people worldwide are suffering from this disease. By 2050, the number of patients is projected to reach 150 million. Patients gradually lose their memories, their cognitive abilities continuously decline, and eventually they can't even take care of themselves in daily life. What's even more disheartening is that all previous medications could only temporarily relieve symptoms, completely unable to prevent disease progression. But now, finally, there's hope. Before diving into the new drugs, let's first understand how Alzheimer's disease damages the brain. The core problem of this disease lies in a substance called beta-amyloid protein, or amyloid-beta, abbreviated as ABA. Normally, this protein is naturally metabolized by the body, but in Alzheimer's disease patients, these proteins abnormally cluster together, forming toxic oligomers that eventually accumulate into plaques. These plaques are like garbage piles in the brain, seriously disrupting signal transmission between neurons. Imagine if your home was filled with garbage, your daily functions would certainly be affected. The brain works the same way. Worse still, these plaques trigger a chain reaction, including another protein called tau that also goes wrong. After excessive phosphorylation, it forms neurofibrillary tangles, like electrical wires tangled together, that can't function properly. These lesions cause nerve cells to gradually die, and the brain begins to shrink. Particularly the hippocampus and entorhinal cortex, which manage short-term memory, are attacked first. This is why the earliest symptoms in Alzheimer's patients often involve not being able to remember recent events. Through brain imaging studies, we can clearly see that patients' brain cortex becomes thinner, brain sulci widen, and ventricles enlarge. More shockingly, these lesions may have already begun 10 to 20 years before symptoms appear, but patients and families are completely unaware. So what exactly are these new drugs? Between July 2023 and July 2024, in just 1 year, the US FDA successfully approved 2 revolutionary Alzheimer's disease drugs. This is a major breakthrough in medical history. The first drug is Lecanemab, with the Chinese name Leqembi. This was jointly developed by the Japanese pharmaceutical company Eisai and American Biogen. It received FDA's full approval in July 2023, becoming the first anti-amyloid monoclonal antibody drug to receive full approval. Taiwan's TFDA also approved this drug for market launch in March 2025. The second drug is Donanemab, with the Chinese name Kisunla, developed by American pharmaceutical company Eli Lilly. It received FDA approval in July 2024. This drug has a unique feature. It's the first anti-amyloid therapy that doesn't require lifetime use. Taiwan's TFDA also approved its marketing application in April 2025. Both of these drugs belong to the category of monoclonal antibody therapy. What are monoclonal antibodies? Simply put, they are a type of highly specific immunoglobulin that can precisely identify specific targets. Here, their targets are the abnormal beta-amyloid proteins in the brain. The mechanism of action works like this. Doctors inject the monoclonal antibodies into the patient's bloodstream through intravenous injection. Lecanemab is injected once every 2 weeks, while Donanemab is injected once a month. After these antibodies enter the blood circulation, they cross the blood-brain barrier and enter the brain. Then, like guided missiles, they precisely find the beta-amyloid proteins and bind to them. Once the antibodies tag these abnormal proteins, the body's immune system recognizes these marked targets and activates the clearance mechanism. Macrophages and other immune cells engulf these marked amyloid proteins, just like sanitation workers cleaning up garbage. Through this process, the amyloid plaques in the brain gradually decrease, and disease progression slows down. Sounds great, but what about the actual results? Let's look at the clinical trial data. Lecanemab's Phase 3 clinical trial lasted 18 months, and enrolled nearly 800 early-stage Alzheimer's disease patients. The results showed that compared to the placebo control group, patients taking Lecanemab showed a 7% reduction in overall functional decline, a 26% reduction in cognitive decline, a 37% reduction in activities of daily living decline, and a 24% slowing of overall disease progression. What do these numbers mean? Converted to actual time, it's roughly 4 to 6 months of disease progression delay. You might think, only 4 to 6 months, is it worth it? For Alzheimer's patients and families, gaining a few more months of clarity, remembering loved ones' faces a bit longer, and maintaining a little more independence for a bit longer is actually incredibly precious. Moreover, this is the first time in medical history that a drug can truly slow Alzheimer's disease progression, not just mask symptoms. This significance is even more profound. Donanemab's clinical trials also showed similar efficacy. Its unique feature is that the study design allowed some patients who achieved treatment targets to discontinue the drug, a feature not seen in other anti-amyloid drugs. This could potentially reduce the cost and side effect risks of long-term treatment. However, we must be honest, these drugs are not panaceas. They have clear applicable populations and limitations. First, these drugs are only suitable for early-stage patients, including those with mild cognitive impairment, MCI, and those with mild Alzheimer's disease. If the disease has progressed to moderate or severe stages, the drug's effectiveness is greatly reduced, or may even be completely ineffective. Second, patients must first be tested to confirm that their brain indeed has beta amyloid protein deposits before using these drugs. This usually requires confirmation through positron emission tomography, PET scan, or cerebrospinal fluid testing. Third, in Taiwan, TFDA's approved use has genetic restrictions. Patients must be APOE4 gene heterozygous carriers or non-carriers to use these drugs. APOE4 homozygous carriers face higher risks of side effects and are currently not within the approved scope. This differs from the FDA's approval scope in the United States. Most importantly, we must recognize that these drugs cannot cure Alzheimer's disease, nor can they reverse brain damage that has already occurred. Their main function is to slow deterioration, not to stop it, much less restore the brain to normal. A shrunken hippocampus won't grow back, and dead nerve cells won't come back to life. The drug simply helps apply the brakes, slowing the rate of decline, but the car continues to slide forward. Since these are potent drugs, they naturally have side effects. The most common and concerning side effects of these drugs are called amyloid-related imaging abnormalities, abbreviated as ARIA. ARIA is mainly divided into two types. The first type is ARIA-E, where E stands for edema, referring to local fluid accumulation and swelling in the brain. About 12 to 17% of patients experience this condition. The second type is ARIA-H, where H stands for hemorrhage, referring to small bleeding points or larger areas of bleeding in the brain. This occurs in a higher proportion, about 17% to 31% of patients. Fortunately, most ARIA is mild and patients may have no symptoms at all, only discovered during regular MRI scans. But in rare cases, ARIA can cause headaches, confusion, vision problems, or even seizures, which could be life-threatening in severe cases. APOE4 gene homozygous carriers have a particularly high risk of severe ARIA, which is why Taiwan's TFDA currently doesn't approve these drugs for this population. Doctors will conduct genetic testing before prescribing to ensure medication safety. Besides ARIA, patients receiving intravenous injections may also experience infusion-related reactions, including fever, chills, rash, blood pressure changes, and more. Some patients experience headaches, dizziness, nausea, and other symptoms. Therefore, during treatment, patients need regular MRI monitoring. Usually, in the early stages of treatment, scans are done every few weeks, and later the interval can be gradually extended to detect ARIA and other side effects early. In Taiwan, the market launch of these two drugs has attracted high attention from the medical community. The Taiwan Society of Geriatric Psychiatry specifically issued appropriate use guidelines for Lecanemab, detailing which patients are suitable for use, how to conduct evaluation, and how to monitor for side effects. This guideline emphasizes that before using these drugs, comprehensive patient evaluation must be conducted, including cognitive function testing, genetic testing, brain imaging studies to confirm amyloid protein deposition, and assessment of contraindications. During treatment, the medical team needs to closely monitor patient response. Besides regular MRI scans, they must track changes in cognitive function, performance and activities of daily living, and any possible side effects. This is a treatment process requiring long-term commitment, not something that can be solved with a single injection. It's worth noting that not all countries and regions have the same attitude toward these new drugs. The European Medicines Agency, EMA, is more conservative in its view of these drugs. The EMA has expressed concerns about the risk-benefit ratio of Lecanemab, believing that the relatively limited therapeutic effect may not be sufficient to offset the risks of side effects like ARIA. This shows that the medical community still has different opinions about these new drugs, and long-term efficacy and safety require more real-world data to prove. So, what impact do these new drugs have on the overall treatment landscape for Alzheimer's disease? First, this is a major scientific breakthrough. Over the past half-century, countless research teams have tried to develop Alzheimer's disease medications, and the vast majority have failed. These monoclonal antibody drugs are the first time a medication can produce substantial therapeutic effects targeting the root cause of the disease, beta-amyloid protein deposition. This proves that the amyloid hypothesis is the right direction and provides guidance for future drug development. Second, this brings hope to early-stage patients. Although delaying 4 to 6 months seems small, for patients and families, every moment of clarity is precious. More importantly, if we can detect and treat earlier combined with other therapies, the results could be even better. Third, the success of these drugs has motivated more new drug development. Currently, dozens of new drugs for Alzheimer's disease are in clinical trial stages globally, some targeting different pathways, others trying different treatment strategies. The success of Lecanemab and Donanemab shows pharmaceutical companies and research institutions hope for future development, willing to invest more resources. Fourth, this highlights the importance of early diagnosis. Since the drugs only work for early-stage patients, detecting the disease early becomes critically important. This has driven development of more sensitive diagnostic tools, including blood biomarker testing, aiming to detect disease signs before symptoms appear. However, we must also face some challenges. These drugs are extremely expensive, with annual treatment costs potentially in the millions of Taiwan dollars. Although Taiwan has approved marketing, it's still uncertain whether the national health insurance will cover it and under what conditions. For many families, the financial burden could be the biggest obstacle to receiving treatment. Furthermore, these drugs require regular intravenous injections and intensive monitoring, placing considerable burden on the healthcare system. How to establish comprehensive treatment and monitoring procedures to ensure patient medication safety is a question the healthcare system needs to address. For patients and families, we offer the following suggestions. First, maintain cautiously optimistic attitudes. These new drugs are indeed important medical progress, but they're not a magic cure. We must have reasonable expectations, not being overly optimistic, nor completely giving up because the effects are limited. Second, if you notice obvious memory decline or other suspected dementia symptoms, you should see a doctor for evaluation as soon as possible. The earlier the stage, the greater the potential benefit of using these drugs. Don't delay seeking medical care by thinking, this is just what happens when you get old. Third, fully discuss the benefits and risks of treatment with your doctor. Everyone's situation is different and suitable. Treatment approaches vary. Understand in detail the potential benefits and risks of the drug, including side effects like ARIA, and the monitoring procedures required. Then make an informed decision. Fourth, even if you choose to use these new drugs, you cannot rely solely on medication. Research shows that cognitive training, regular exercise, healthy diet, adequate sleep, and active social engagement all help slow dementia. Drug therapy should be combined with comprehensive lifestyle adjustments to achieve maximum effectiveness. Fifth, pay attention to developments in national health insurance coverage policies. Because drug costs are high, whether the insurance covers it will greatly affect treatment accessibility. Patients and families can learn about the latest coverage information and application procedures through patient support groups. Finally, what we want to say is that Alzheimer's disease is a complex illness and won't have a single solution. The arrival of Lecanemab and Donanemab represents taking a crucial step in fighting this century-long challenge, but this is just the beginning, not the end. In the future, we may see more drugs with different mechanisms arriving. There may be therapies targeting tau protein, neuroprotective agents, or combination therapies targeting multiple pathways. We may see even earlier diagnostic tools or even preventive treatment starting before symptoms appear. Emerging technologies like gene therapy and cell therapy may also play important roles in the future. For current patients, these new drugs provide an option they didn't have before, a glimmer of hope. Although this light is not yet strong enough to completely dispel the shadow of disease, it proves that darkness can be broken. As science advances, this light will grow brighter. The battle against Alzheimer's disease continues, but we no longer face the enemy without weapons. For all patients, families, and caregivers, please don't lose hope. Medicine is advancing, society is paying attention, support systems are being built. Together we work, and one day, Alzheimer's disease will no longer be an incurable disease. This concludes today's in-depth introduction to new Alzheimer's disease drugs. If you or your family is struggling with dementia, remember, you are not alone. Seek professional medical help, join patient support groups, make good use of social resources, and face this challenge together. Thank you for watching healthU. We'll see you next time.